I was prosecutor for 8 years, ran the biggest office in our state, and I also now chair the Senate Rules Committee, so I've made it my mission to focus on rebuilding our Capitol Police. We're pleased that we have new police chief, that we are still recruiting officers. We're still down, but we've seen improvements in morale, and I've literally, after what happened on January 6th, that we lost officers, you know, from both that day and from suicide, I have made it my mission to make this place better for them. So many of them injured, so many of them really never going to be the same. And that has been my focus since I've gotten here. I also I wanted to just clarify a few things. I just heard about defund the police. I'll give you an example of my city of Minneapolis. There was a ballot initiative that was described that way. I opposed it, so did the governor, and it actually was defeated in a liberal city. I think one of the focuses has got to be, as you all know, reforming some of the practices, but at the same time, funding the police. And I guess that's my first question of you, Chief Henninger. You called for an expansion of the COPS program in your opening remarks. I actually lead that bipartisan legislation with Senator Murkowski, as well as Senator Coons, Tillis, Feinstein, and Graham to reauthorize the COPS hiring program. How have you seen the COPS hiring program help local law enforcement to improve training, upgrade technology, and retain experienced officers?
So over the last 30 years, the COPS program has been wonderful to give all size organizations the opportunity to improve their ability to support their communities. From bringing on additional officers to show the elected leaders that there was a need, or from a technology project to get it off the ground and started, it's worked really well to help make us a better profession and professionalize and understand how to be better interacting with the community. So it's been very supportive, and we're really appreciative of the work you're doing to bring that back.
Okay. Oh, Sheriff, you wanted to add something?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Senator, for your support of so many of those kinds of things. I just want to mention on the COPS program, one of the challenges that a lot of the communities have is the match. Mm-hmm. So our brothers and sisters in fire service, most of their grants, their personnel grants, don't have a match. But when you have, especially an urban community or a community that's struggling with their budgets, they may want the position, but the match becomes a prohibitor. So anything that could be done on that front would be certainly helpful. I know one of my communities that we police under contract is constantly budget struggle. And so the match impediment that exists in law enforcement, especially for personnel and cops, would be something that would be
I know. I just encountered this with one of our mayors and worked with the Justice Department on it. We found a way, but I would like to improve that. So thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate that. Commissioner Harrison, you testified that the availability of illegal guns is a direct factor in the spike in gun violence. I agree. Yesterday, I introduced a bill with Senator Peters of Michigan and 9 other colleagues to require federal and state law enforcement to crack down on devices that can turn semi-automatic guns into fully automatic weapons. These devices, as you probably know, can be purchased from foreign manufacturers, as we talk about the internet, for under $20 and can be installed in under a minute. Can you talk about the challenge law enforcement faces when responding to gun violence incidents that involve weapons that can fire automatically, and what you think of this proposal?
Well, I think that's a great proposal. We've seen an increase in weapons that can be fired automatically, not just from people who can buy the devices and put them in the weapon, but can actually make them off laser printers fairly quickly and put them into assault rifles and into handguns. And so we have seen an increase in polymer 80s or ghost guns or privately made firearms. We're seeing more of an increase in that than we're seeing in your traditional firearms in the city of Baltimore. And I think that's a trend that we're seeing around the country as well. So it's becoming increasingly difficult to stop the number of shootings, because with those fully automatic weapons, perpetrators are shooting and striking multiple victims, as you heard in the opening statement. While they may only intend to shoot one person, they're shooting multiple people. And so we have had an increase in the number of shootings where we had 3 or 4 or 5 people shot when only one person was the intended target, simply because the weapon most likely was an automatic weapon rather than a automatic weapon. So it's not just for my city, but I think all of us are seeing increasing challenges with that specific issue. So we need to find a way to be able to eliminate the purchase of those devices and the creation of those devices and have strict penalties and consequences for those who are caught with it.
Very good. I appreciate that. And I think part of this is not just responding to things from the past, but looking to what's right in front of us.
Absolutely.
Which is things like this, which you guys have to do every day in your jobs. I just want to, and Chief Henninger, I'm sorry about the loss of your partner to gun violence. It's actually what's motivated me for doing a lot of things that I've worked on, including the closing the boyfriend loophole that we recently did in the bipartisan agreement that Senator Cornyn and Senator Murphy and Tillis and Sinema and many others put together. The case I most remember of an officer being killed was a guy in Lake City who responded to a domestic violence case, young woman who called in, a boyfriend completely having mental health issues, a veteran actually, and the officer came to the door and he had his own bulletproof vest. You talked about protection, but the guy shot him in the head. And I went to that funeral, and at that funeral was in the church, that dad who was killed, the cop, had been there just a few weeks before for the nativity play with his 2 little boys that were in it. And there was a little baby as well. And that mom walked down the aisle, that same church where her husband had been sitting in the front row watching the nativity play with a little girl with a blue dress with stars on it and with those 2 little boys by her side. And we got to remember that this violence, so many times it's officers who are on the front end of it, and that gets forgotten. And that was part of my motivation in working on the boyfriend loophole, only because I think officers know some of the most dangerous scenes you get called to can be this domestic violence scene. So I just want to thank you for your service. I continue being from the state where the tragic murder of George Floyd occurred. Devoted to reform, but at the same time believing that we can invest in our law enforcement and get that respect that you deserve and move forward together. So I just want to thank you for what you're doing. And I think I was going to turn over to Senator Cotton, but someone just passed me a note. It was Senator Blackburn. Is that right? Okay.